Hi, my name is Doug Burton. I'm the VP of Data and Application Cloud Solutions at Burwood Group. And we have an awesome story for you today because we get to work with Google's Rapid Innovation team to bring cutting edge ideas to market to help you do your job. So focused on research grant process and helping you leverage generative AI tools to do three things. It's going to help you save time in the grant writing process and the grant finding process, allowing you to more quickly identify which grants you should apply to, which ones are relevant to your research, increase the velocity of being able to find and respond to those, and accelerate your success by leveraging generative AI technology to help you with your applications and ensuring that you are answering the questions relevant to the grant award. Challenge is there are so many grants that are available for application, and matching researchers to those grants is something that we want to help make easier, make more productive, and reduce the churn that comes with all the work. Looking at grants, is this relevant for me? The average success rate for an applicant is about 25%, and it takes up to 120 hours depending on the complexity of these grants. So we're trying to address how can we make it simpler, faster, better, cheaper, easier, and bring more information to the process to help with grant applications. At the core of what we're doing is leveraging Google's Gemini AI to help you do all the work that is going to simplify and get the benefits we just talked about. It is using grants.gov as the baseline of all the granting opportunities that are out there, which covers thousands of grant-making agencies, and really focuses on three main features. One is personalizing the grant search, finding out which grants are relevant to what you want to research. Two, speeding up the process by helping you complete the first draft of your grant proposal. And three, looking for relevant publications, research already completed that might help inform your research. That is not only saving you time from having to read all those in detail, but also finding the ones that are most relevant to your research, and we'll demonstrate those now. There are two main sections within here: the grant search and the PubMed central review. The grant search is where the first two examples come into play of the benefits of finding and then responding to the grants. So in my first example, we have an abstract that summarizes the research that you want to complete, and you simply say search. Using that abstract, it is looking against all of the grants.gov research that is out there and saying these are the grants most relevant. It is giving you a score. It is much like a Google search and saying the top ranked score is the most relevant, and it's more relevant than the ones below. So obviously these are going to be the ones that gives you a prioritized list of what to go through. It still requires you to look through and say, yes, I believe that these are correct, but we give you all the tools you need to succeed with this. Number one, when was it released, so you know how recent it is, and also an expiration, because we don't want to point you to something that is due tomorrow. In here, you'll get the direct link to the explanation of what this grant available is to you, and you can click through to the specific opportunity within grants.gov and see all of the data around this research. Similar research opportunities that you might want to look into as well. And then the link to the additional information is the actual source within NIH for this describing this grant, which is all the information about when it was released, or previous applications to this, what is going to be required for the instructions to apply, the full text of the announcement, including all the detail about the research objectives, as well as the award information and the eligibility, and all the information you need to include in your response submission to apply for that grant. So everything is here. So that's great, but we want to simplify the process. So when we go back in here, we get into our example and we say, yes, this is relevant to my research. I want to apply. Let's generate that application. So what we do is first do the prompt engineering to give AI the information about what it's doing here. It is helping write this grant proposal, and in doing so, it is going to create the executive summary, describe the methods and strategies, and talk about why funding is needed for this grant. It pastes in the abstract that we had from the previous page, and then it imports all the information from this specific grant, and then is going to create that, that summary for you. The lever that you have here is to decide how creative do you want Gen AI to be in doing this. You don't want to be 0%, too factual based, and it won't take some creative liberties that help you with that initial draft, but you also don't want to be completely creative because then you'll end up with a poem. So our recommendation is to be somewhere around 20%, and you can play around with that and see what makes the most sense. But this is going to take that first draft based on the information that we've provided. This will take probably about 10 to 15 more seconds. And this is where we like to talk about in this granting process, obviously the human in the loop. It is going to give you an initial result. It is your responsibility and obligation to then take that as a first draft and decide which parts make sense. But it is giving you an executive summary describing the methods and strategies, all the information about how the research would be conducted, why funding is needed. So everything we talked about up above. In the prompt engineering, if you want more to be included, this upper section is completely editable. We can drop more information in there. I'll give an example of, say, why I am interested in this opportunity based on my previous research. So I'm going to rerun this and show how we have only the abstract information to go on in this initial example. And we'll go back and run this a second time after we enhance the information available to the generative AI tooling. But you'll see that anything you change in this upper section is completely up to you about how you want to give the prompts to get the results that are going to help you draft this first opportunity. So you'll see in this one to say, my previous research is focused on, and it's, creating some things based on what it thinks is probably relevant, but you're going to see things like insert citations of relevant publications here. So it's saying, I don't really have enough information to create a great response to this piece, but it's giving you some text to start the response. So let's go back and say, well, how do we give it more information about me? Because there are some things that we can do. So make sure our example is still back in there. The other really cool feature within this is we can add researcher profiles. So this is using Google's Scholar ID, and we have this queued up with a couple researchers. So we're going to pick Volker, who is an incredibly smart dude who works for Google. And so he has had a lot of publications that have already been cited and are relevant and build all the knowledge about anything he's ever published. Now is going to enrich our search as we go through this and say, now that we've added that, we're going to customize our search. We're going to change the result sets of what comes in and find, instead of just basing it on the abstract, based on the abstract and Volker's entire publication history, and say, hey, this is a new one that now has risen to the top. It is a lower score because we're including more information in. So even though it's technically a lower score, it's the match against everything we've loaded in. So how well does this grant match all of that background? But because it's more information being brought in, it should be a more relevant search and a more relevant application that we want to do. So let's just assume that we've now looked through this one and said, absolutely, this is the one that we think is worth applying to, and we generate the application. And I'm going to add in, as close as I can remember to the search, I said, tell why this grant opportunity is relevant to my interests. And go to the same 20%. So as we do this, same executive summary, methods and strategies, why the funding is needed, but you'll see that by adding in that additional information, generative AI can use that context to give a much more rich and contextual response and help what you're doing with this. So adding in that information, we now see that this grant aligns perfectly with my longstanding interest in applying computational methods to solve complex biological problems. A very different response than we had the first time, because before it was just based on that abstract. Now we know what Volker's work is. You'll see that there's no more fill in the blank here. It is giving you an answer that is a much better, richer experience within what we have available to us. So using the information for getting much better results. So that is the grant search capability. The other thing we have is addressing the need to say there are a lot of articles that are published every year, and we're currently tied into PubMed Central. If there are other repositories we can point to, very easy for us to do that. All we need to do is have links into those repositories. But you can spend a lot of time as a researcher having to read through all these papers, and we want to give a simpler way to build your knowledge about which ones are going to be most useful for me in my research. So then I can decide out of these 50 articles, which ones should I really spend the time to read in depth. So in our prompt engineering, we give a little bit of background about who I am, the type of research I do, and then point to the article and say, can you please summarize this for me and tell me if it's relevant to my research? The relevant to my research, as you'll see, we're still tied into our Google Scholar ID, and so it's bringing in all the previous publications. So it's not just based on the statement up here, but it's also pulling in the background to decide that relevancy. So now it's going out, it's reading this article, and then deciding how do I summarize it and how is it relevant to us? And we get the response. So here's a breakdown of the article, all the summary of what's there, the methods they use, the community involvement, a lot of detail, and then the relevance to my research. And we see that it has a very limited direct relevance. So maybe I don't need to read this article in detail because we have a lot of information about this. So indirectly, it could be relevant. So maybe I want to look into these specific areas. So we can jump right into the article, and now we can decide if we look for those things that are relevant to us, and it has the full context and content of that article. Obviously, reading through this would take me personally probably an hour to understand what's in here. But the decision of whether or not to invest that time in reading this article, we already know that the relevancy is probably low. So maybe we just skip over this one. But we think this is a fantastic tool to save you time, accelerate your research, help you understand how we can leverage previous researchers to further your efforts. So this completes our demo of the capabilities today, but we would like to talk about what the future looks like. So we have stood on the shoulders of giants. The Google's Rapid Innovation team came up with the idea for this, supplied it to Burwood as a partner, and we have taken it and turned it from a demo into a working solution that's fully integrated into Grants AI, fully protected, scalable, and secure. When we deploy this, it is deployed within your Google tenant. It is not shared with anyone else. So when you're submitting research ideas, those abstracts never leave your Google tenant. It is not used to inform language models. No one is benefiting from your data except for you. Our goal with this tool is, as we roll it out more and more, is to get feedback from our partners and say, what other capabilities are you interested in adding to this? So it is something we can and definitely plan on investing more time and effort into evolving and enhancing. Specifically, we're interested in looking at the fact that one side of the equation has been addressed. It is looking at how do we help the researchers. One possible scenario here is that we make it much easier for researchers to submit, and there's going to be a much larger amount of grant applications coming into the systems, and those granting agencies are going to have more and more to look at. So what we'd love to do is get a rubric that says, hey, let's identify the best match for the best researcher, the best idea, the thing that's going to further our research goals, accelerate research and awards so that people can reduce their time to science and fantastic results. So we look forward to working with you. If you have questions, please feel free to follow up with your Burwood account executive or your Google field sales representative, and we would be more than happy to engage, tell you more about the solution, and hear about your hopes and dreams. Thanks for your time today.